Okay, move on to item 3.3, progress update on the implementation of Student Success Task Force recommendations.
All right.
Vice Chancellor Skinner.
So this next item will, the conversation is going to take place around this document. It was handed out this morning. It's a landscape matrix. And this is our a new attempt to try to describe the overall progress on this agenda. And that has always been a challenge. It's such, because it's so sweeping in its scale. Trying to, and because the action is taking place on so many different fronts. It's a challenge to present it in a succinct way. This effort was, actually maybe I should have kept Paul up here because it was, he spearheaded this new format, and so it's a test run here with you today. But the focus of this presentation is an update on student success, on implementation of the Student Success Task Force recommendations. And as I step through this, I would want to just make note of a couple things in order to frame the conversation and really to take stock of where we're at. And if we look back to January 1st, 2011, that's when Senate Bill 1143 became law. At the board meeting that month, and SB 1143 called on the Board of Governors to convene a task force of system stakeholders to promote and improve student completion within our system. And so at the board meeting that month in January, the board appointed that task force, 21 members rather, and of stakeholders including faculty, college presidents, trustees, staff, students, members of the business community. It was a broad spectrum of stakeholders, both internal and external. We had external researchers, and that task force kicked off its work later that month in January, and throughout the course of the next month met regularly, met monthly to wade through the myriad issues that are connected with student success and completion, to examine where the community colleges were in terms of performance and where they wanted to be for the benefit of our students. And so at the end of the year, the task force came together, and all this was taking place under the leadership of member Peter McDougall, chair of that task force, who was working very closely hand in hand with Chancellor Scott throughout that process. At the end of the year, the task force formalized 22 recommendations, really affecting essentially every aspect of how the colleges operate, and brought that and those recommendations came forward to this board in January 2012. The board unanimously accepted and endorsed those 22 recommendations, and that became the board's student success agenda. That's been our marching orders ever since. The next phase was essentially a year-long effort focusing on again, engaging with system partners, system stakeholders. We convened numerous working groups, including faculty, staff, students, other experts, CEOs, other experts from across the system, and really began chipping away at these 22 recommendations, figuring out where we can make some progress. And so, that was a year ago when this board adopted that agenda. And I'm proud to say in the last year, I think there's a lot of progress to be made. Or rather, a lot of progress that has been made. And if you look at this document in front of you, there are the 22 recommendations are laid out. 19 of the 22 recommendations have been addressed to some extent. Some of those in a very substantial and permanent way. Others in a very much a beginning conversations that have played out in work groups. But in one shape or form, each of 19 of those 22 recommendations have been worked on over this last year. I think that's pretty impressive. Four very significant cornerstones were laid this last year, two of which were in the legislation, SB 1456, carried by Senator Lowenthal. The two recommendations contained in that bill were number one, the reshaping of the matriculation program. So the matriculation program was renamed and refocused as the Student Success and Support Program, and was really identified as the heart of our student success agenda. And the activities that are provided under that program, orientation, assessment, education planning, counseling, advising, are really fundamental to our ability as a system to move forward in terms of improving completion rates for our students. That was a key finding of the task force, and it continues to really guide our work in this area. So SB 1456 renamed and refocused that program and really highlighted it as a top priority for our system as we move forward. And it's an area that was included. It was included in the Board of Governors budget request, and we will advocate for additional resources to put into that program. The other element in SB 1456 was the modification of the Board of Governors fee waiver program that authorized the Board of Governors and directed the Board of Governors to institute minimum academic thresholds for eligibility for the Board of Governors fee waiver. So at this point, that authority and that direction has been statutorily established, and the next step will be for the board to take that issue up at some point, and we'll get into that a little further into this presentation. The other cornerstones that were laid were the enrollment priority regulations that Chancellor Harris noted have been not only approved by the Board of Governors, but then actually cleared the approval process with the Department of Finance, and will be taking effect. Those enrollment priorities, clearly, what motivates those enrollment priorities was dealt with by the Student Success Task Force in a chapter dealing with incentivizing successful behavior on the part of students. And the notion behind the enrollment priorities, as you well know, I mean, you were the ones that approved them, was to communicate to students expectations of what it takes to succeed in college, and to provide incentives within the structures of the college operation, incentives for students to engage in the behaviors such as orientation, assessment, education planning, selection of a program of study, all those behaviors that are linked with success will if students engage in them, they will receive a higher enrollment priority, a greater probability of getting into the classes they want, and it builds that incentive in. In addition, additionally for continuing students, there's also the linkage back to academic performance. If students are in good academic standing, they will move to the front of the queue, and if they have fallen below minimum academic thresholds, they will move further to the back of the queue. So again, providing an incentive for students to engage in the behaviors that are going to help them succeed. And lastly, the fourth cornerstone is the Student Success Scorecard. Really the groundwork has been laid for that. It will be formally implemented and rolled out in March of 2013. But the basic framework is complete at this point, and the staff in technology research and information systems here in the Chancellor's office under Vice Chancellor Patrick Perry are working on compiling the data and actually building out the reports that will be made public in March. So those four cornerstones really provide, they reshape how the community colleges do business. They are lasting, permanent changes to our system. And I think you as a board can take great pride in the fact that over the last year, you've overseen the implementation of those core elements. Clearly there's much work left ahead, and what I hope to do today is to highlight several of the activities that I think that you can expect to hear more from us on this next year. Activities that I think you're going to need to be engaged on this year, over this next year, in order for us to continue making progress on the student success agenda, and then perhaps this could be a venue for having some further discussion as well about kind of relative priorities in those items. And if you have questions, all the vice chancellors stand ready to come up here with me and address specifics on any of these policy areas if you wish. But so in terms of looking ahead to the next year, several of the key activities include seeking additional funding for the Student Success and Support Program. That was included in your system budget request that you as a board adopted, but it's going to take a lot of hard work on the legislative front, in the Capitol, with the administration, with the legislature, to secure resources in the budget for that. That program started it was essentially repurposing the matriculation funds, which were just shy of $50 million, and that matriculation at its high water mark was $102 million, and that's the goal that was set in the system budget request, was to at least get back to that earlier level of matriculation. And those funds used within the new restructured, refocused Student Success and Support Program will make a tremendous difference to our students, and really help to energize and fuel the local implementation of the Student Success Agenda by making those resources available at the local level, for assessment, orientation, education planning, those key student support programs. I also mentioned that the Board of Governors fee waiver academic thresholds that are called for by Senate Bill 1456. That's some unfinished work that will be before you. The specific time frame has not been set for that, but you can expect to hear at some point with the next few meetings here a proposal for what those thresholds should be, and obviously there'll be a conversation about related to the appropriateness of the threshold, and a discussion of time frame and when those new requirements would go into effect. But that's an important next step that you can anticipate. And then I just highlight three additional areas where I think you can expect to hear more from us. And Vice Chancellor Russell has been heading up several of these. I think he's had some successful summits, convenings of experts from across the system to discuss important policy areas. And I think that those summits will start to yield some tangible products and some specific policies and that the board can take up. And those are in the area of basic skills and professional development. And on both those fronts, the task force identified them as really fundamental to our system moving forward in terms of how we help our students achieve their educational objectives. And so Vice Chancellor Russell's been doing important work on both those fronts, again, basic skills, really working to identify best practices and figuring out strategies and approaches to disseminating those best practices so that across the state, districts have information and the assistance necessary in order to fundamentally improve their basic skills offerings. Likewise with professional development, a great deal of the conversation in the summit really focused around the use of the flexible calendar. It's been a while since we had earmarked funding in the community college budget for professional development at the state level, and the one area where there are resources that are in place there is in that flexible calendar, and it's, as the task force called out, it's a significant amount of money that is set aside for professional development at the local level, and the task force suggested that you as a board should weigh in of how those dollars would be focused, and in collaboration with our faculty partners, develop some standards and guidelines that would help to make those resources more effective. So again, you can expect to see some additional presentations on those items. Also on the Common Core state standards, it's one of those gargantuan projects, involving armies of people, both from K-12 and higher education, and also not only in California but across the nation. So it's mobilizing forces on that scale. Nothing happens overnight, but I think we're getting to the place where the standards and the assessments are being refined to a place where I think it'll be appropriate for the board to get a substantive update on that issue. Again, that really speaks to our linkages with K-12 and working to more effectively communicate to students, particularly at the high school and middle school levels, what it takes to succeed in college. And with the end goal being that more of the students arriving at our door are prepared to begin college level work from day one and succeed in achieving their educational objectives. I would also note that and this creates a linkage with another item on your agenda later today, but there seems to be a growing interest on the part of state leaders around the whole adult education conversation, and the LAO, the Legislative Analyst's Office, put out a report in November looking at adult education programs in California and making a number of recommendations. I think we anticipate in this next legislative cycle, there's likely to be activity on that front. So that gets back to another one of the task force recommendations that really essentially that called on state leaders to develop a unified and effective strategy for providing adult basic skills education. And the task force noted both the fragmentation of those programs across K-12 and community colleges, and also the reduction in funding that had been precipitated by the flexibility that was given to K-12 school districts to redirect money away from adult education. So I think that you as a board should anticipate that there'll be some significant policy proposals coming up on that front, both from the legislature and perhaps from the administration as well. And so I fully anticipate there'll be a need for you as a board to engage in those policy conversations and to provide your oversight and direction to that. So that's my best attempt to try to again, to provide the broad perspective, a little bit of kind of historical perspective of where we're at now, all the work that's gone into this kind of, as we were assembling this table, it was we were a bit odd here in the Chancellor's office, just in terms of taking a minute to kind of catch our breath and take stock of the great amount of effort that's really been poured into this by many folks, not only in the Chancellor's office and on the board, but also literally hundreds of volunteers from the system who have stepped forward and taken part in work groups. that have served on the task force, and it's really been a system-wide effort, and I think that we as a system can look at this and take great pride in it, and realize that I don't think there's any question at all that we've got a vision in terms of where we're proceeding in terms of student success and in terms of improving our programs. And I think that we're fundamentally much better positioned than we were 2 or 3 years ago to engage in those conversations when any external party wants to engage with us a conversation about our student success and completion rates. I think that we have a very strong hand to play here in terms of really demonstrating that we as a system not only have a great commitment to student success, but we have a plan and we have a lot of action that we could point to show that we're making progress in that regard. So with that, that's an overview of where we're at now. Again, the vice chancellors are stand ready to come up if you want to get into more specific conversations about any particular policy area.
Thank you, Executive Vice Chancellor Skinner. Any questions, comments? Member McDougall.
Just make a comment. I'd like to thank the Chancellor and Vice Chancellor Skinner. I found this report to be tremendously encouraging, and also all the people in the field who have been working on it. I think it shows a tremendous commitment to move ahead in the most important area of responsibility we have, the success of our students. So I really appreciate the leadership that is coming forth and moving it. And just want to say thank you.
Member Himmelstein?
Yes, I think I certainly would be remiss, and as Vice President Baum pointed out, this may be the last meeting for Member McDougall. I think we all owe him a great debt of thanks for taking on this task, having watched this very, very closely, and fortunately not having to sit in nearly as many meetings as he did. It took a great amount of patience, a great amount of leadership and wisdom to mold this all together so that our great staff here and our chancellors actually could begin to implement what Eric, you so ably, is that a word? Ably laid out today. So Peter, on behalf of all of us, marvelous work, and thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely, I would having sat on those meetings myself, I would certainly join in acknowledging, I'm sure Chancellor Harris and, let me see, I'm not sure who else was on the committee, but the work that you did as chair was very instrumental in getting it moved to the point that it did. Thank you very much. I'd like to acknowledge it. Member Belansky?
Question. I know that there's like a student success newsletter online that goes out to various people. Will this go out?
Yes, it will. We will distribute that.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful to show people the chart, because I think it's valuable information the way it's laid out.
And again, Vice Chancellor Feast really provided the vision of how to try to communicate that sprawling amount of information. Yeah.
Be happy to send that in a link on the next newsletter.
Member Sumi?
Yeah, actually, I think that would be a terrific idea, because I find this spreadsheet to be very helpful in terms of being able to give us kind of a quick ability to do talking points on all throughout the different recommendations, and be able to inform us so that we can be good amplifiers of where the system is doing. And so I want to appreciate all the work that the staff has done to provide this for us. Thanks very much.
Any other comments? Member Ramos?
Thank you. I agree. Great progress and very encouraging. So what I'd like to do with my question is focus on point 2.2, which deals with the diagnostic assessment, orientation, and educational plan, which is so central, I think, to everything that follows in terms of ensuring student success. in the broader protocol that we're advancing. And Merrick, maybe the question is to you, maybe it's to Patrick Perry, but I note that the implementation of that piece is scheduled for the fall of 2014, which is quite a ways out. And I'm wondering, since that's so essential, at least in my mindset, about how we are going to actually achieve our goals here, why is that taking so long? Is it because we have to develop a protocol that would enable us to capture appropriately student capacities? Is there local development that has to happen at the respective districts and campuses? What's the point of delaying that piece of it for such a long while, at least apparently to me?
And again, that's 2.2 you're
Correct.
referencing.
Yeah,
If I could ask Vice Chancellor Michalowski to join me up here.
Sure.
It really speaks to the enrollment priority regulations is the mechanism we're using to make some headway on this front.
Sure.
And actually, while she's on her way up, I noted another item that you should expect to be doing some work on over this next year is the implementation of the regulations that underlie SB 1456. There are elements of that bill, not only on the BOG fee waiver piece, which I spoke to, but on the student success and support program and the restructuring of matriculation. There are regulatory changes on that front too, and those will be coming in front of you. But Vice Chancellor Michalowski.
You know, it's always a challenge to take very complex things and boil them down into this kind of format. And I was actually hoping we could have a conversation internally afterwards about what exactly does this expected implementation date mean, because we are already implementing elements of that recommendation. And it's not as though nothing will happen prior to 2014. I think our vision was that by 2014 it will be fully implemented, including the development of appropriate technology tools that will be available statewide, which requires obtaining funding. So right now, with the passage of SB 1456, that was the first step in making progress on this, because it both lays out the vision for how we focus the support resources that we have and can obtain on these services, and it also, for the first time, has a clear requirement that lets colleges require students to avail themselves of those services, and so that's an improvement over current law, over prior law. We currently have 2 work groups that are meeting. One looking at the Title V regulations governing the old matriculation program to recast those regulations around these priority services. And the other is looking at the MIS data reporting about these services. And under SB 1456, the allocation formula for what has been the matriculation funds will change to take into consideration the services that colleges are providing. So we have an active work group on that front.
Great.
So you will have pieces of this coming to you, and by 2014, it should be quite fully implemented statewide.
Great.
In a robust way.
That's very clarifying. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Chancellor Harrison.
I would underscore something Linda and Eric have both referred to. Part of the reason that we've provided this to you in this format is Dr. McDougall insisted, as did the task force members, that this be looked upon as a body of work. And keeping these together like this forces all of us to remember we can't really pick and choose which pieces of this we're going to do. We really do need to be putting our effort into the entire document. And I think one of the most reaffirming things when you review this is that there are only a couple of the recommendations that we have yet to begin working on. And so some of these will, by necessity, take a number of years to fully implement. But what a report like this does is really cause all of us to realize this is a set of recommendations, not isolated ones that we can choose to sort of ignore if we don't like them.
Well, very good work. Given the extensive discussions on Common Core standards and adult ed, maybe we could renew our discussions about our relationships with the State Board of Education, and maybe at some point in time be able to maybe join them and begin to focus on some of these policy questions regarding those areas, along with some other interests as well. So that's something that maybe we can take up that discussion at the March meeting retreat. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you both very much.